I think it's easy to make the guess or the assumption that with a 12-team playoff, with more teams in the pool, it'll be easier to win a national championship because more teams will have a chance. I think it's going to be harder. I think college football is going to be harder to win from now on. I think it's going to be harder to win in college football than it was. And that's not just because of expansion, it's because of everything. I think that the last few years have been an extremely transitional period for the sport. Lots of rule tweaks, lots of conference realignment, a lot of changes, right? The sport that we know and love, and that's not different than how it has ever been. It's always changed. There were 2 teams that played BCS. There were no teams that played at one point in time in like a really, really official national championship the way it is now. And then there's 4 teams, and starting next season, there's going to be 12 teams in a college football playoff. But all of the changes make it a little bit more like the league, especially with the new NIL laws, litigation, statutes that they're working on to where schools can even more officially pay their athletes. But this is going to be hard, and I think it's going to be harder for the Georgia Bulldogs. Preface. It's also going to be harder for everyone else. And you have to go through Georgia as well. So I think, yes, it is going to be harder to win, but Georgia's not going anywhere, and this program's not going anywhere. And the elite of the elite will win all the time, and Georgia is going to be in that conversation, and Georgia's going to be in the conversation for national championships as long as Kirby Smart is doing what he's doing. Ryan Kelly from Dawg Post here talking about the changes in college football, how it affects Georgia, how it affects everybody. Let's actually verbalize what's going to be different. I think that we've been seeing all these changes, and now next year, it's, the cake's going to be almost baked. It's going to be almost completely baked. It's runny right now. It's been runny, right? They put it in the oven a few years ago, and it's been cooking. And next year, it's going to be safe to take it out of the oven because NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, TV deals, expansion, all of it's going to be implemented into 1 year, and you're going to be able to have a bite of that cake. And you might not like the flavor or not. Me personally, I'm not in love, but I think that the changes will also be good. It will mean more college football and it'll be more games. Why is it going to be harder? I've got the projected schedule for Georgia right now. So let's talk about football-wise. Let's talk about football-wise first. Why is it going to be harder? Well, you're going to be playing more good teams with expansion. With the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, and you now have a 16 conference in the SEC, you're going to run into more challenging games against bigger programs because Texas and Oklahoma are in. It just changed the rotation. Getting rid of the divisions as well for Georgia will make it harder. Making it to the SEC championship game is going to be a lot harder because they won't have a guaranteed game against Vanderbilt, South Carolina, whoever it is that you feel Georgia's just going to beat every single time. And obviously they don't beat them every single time, but you get my point. Now that's out of the window. It's just the top 2 teams make it to the SEC championship game. And then you look at next year's schedule. I've got it pulled up in front of me. Got to play Clemson at a neutral site. Got to go to Kentucky. Got to go to Alabama. Got to go to Texas. Got to go to Ole Miss. You still got the Florida game. You still got to play Tennessee. I mean, that's a challenging football schedule. To expect Georgia to just go undefeated the way it has the last 3 years would be an unrealistic expectation, especially since at the end of the day, is the football team going to be as good as it was the last 3 years? We don't know. It could be better than 23. You know what I mean? We don't know that yet because the dominoes haven't fallen enough for us to be able to say. We don't know who's going to be on the Georgia roster next year. Literally, we don't know who some of the players are going to be, right? Some people haven't made their announcements. Maybe some flips will happen in recruiting. We don't know which freshmen are going to be stars. But we do know that Georgia's going to have to beat a lot of really good teams to make the college football playoff. Now, the counter argument to that is yes, you can afford to lose a couple games now. It's not just this, if you lose 2 games, you're out of the college football playoff. You have 0 chance to win a national championship. Now you can lose 2, and you might be able to lose 3, just depending on how the season goes. Another reason, here's another reason to be harder. Now the playoff would be longer. You'd have to play another game, and that's another step that makes it harder. If the 12-team playoff with it, and I know that when I say this out loud, if you weren't aware of this next part's going to make you laugh. But in a 12-team playoff, Georgia would be hosting Ole Miss. Number 6 versus number 11. Georgia would be hosting Ole Miss. And the winner would go on to play Texas. Well, we know how that story went. 52-17. in November. I don't think that the result will be too different. I think that it would be a Georgia beatdown in that case. And I think Georgia would beat Texas. So in this particular season, would it really be that much of an issue for Georgia? No, but you'd have to play more games. Is more risk. It's more challenge. And just because it is for Georgia, it also is for everybody. And that's my point. People have to play Georgia as well. That's the part that, it's going to be so hard. It's going to be so hard. They got to play Georgia. But yes, it will be harder. NIL and the transfer portal are evening the playing field out. And we saw that immediately this year. The dominance of college football seems to be waning away. And each year it feels like one or two teams really dominate. Didn't feel that way this year. It's changing. Why? Really good players not going to wait their turn as much as they used to. They're going to go to other places and they're going to play. The talent distribution is going to be more evenly spread out throughout the country than it has been before. Because what does Jackson State want to do? Let's go get Travis Hunter or Colorado. I don't know that's more of a Dion thing, but that's my point. Why would Travis Hunter be at Colorado? You know what I mean? That's just an example. You got people moving all over. Look at all these quarterbacks. You got Bo Nix moving around. An SEC quarterback going to the Pac-12. You got Graham Mertz coming from the Big Ten to the SEC. You got Michael Penix Jr. going from the Big Ten to the Pac-12. And now the Pac-12's gone. The Pac-12's gone. That's how crazy all of this is. And I think it's going to make it harder to win. You look at Georgia's already had around 10 at this point in time. Saturday, December 9th at 5 is when I'm recording. This is going to go out Sunday morning. But this is, Georgia's already had a handful of players, I think around 10, who are entering the transfer portal. Those are really talented football players. Now, they're going to replenish it with recruits. They're going to replenish it by maybe picking out a couple players from the transfer portal and convincing them to come to Athens. But, yeah, it's harder when you're going to be losing that talent every year. You wouldn't have that many people transfer out all the time. And you got 5-star quarterbacks leaving. And that's not been any different. Georgia, JT Daniels left, Justin Fields left, Jacob Eason left, and Georgia still won national championships. But it's going to happen even more often now with people not being as willing to wait their turn. What makes Georgia different is the culture that Kirby Smart has built, the buy-in that Kirby Smart has helped cause with his players. So for Georgia, will it be as hard compared to some of these other teams? No. But Kentucky, man, that sucks. I don't have Kentucky's schedule pulled in front of me, but man, a team that's kind of in the third tier of the SEC? I don't know how you'd want to tier it out. I'd probably have to think about that a little bit more. Not in the first tier and probably not in the second tier either. It becomes tough for a Kentucky team that now has to play even better teams. I mean, let's not pretend like Texas and Oklahoma are not legit football programs that are kind of going to come over, and it will be difficult, and I imagine the transition's not going to be easy, but let's not act like they're not really good football programs that are both in a good place. Texas more so than Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been in better, but to think that Oklahoma's going to come over here and just be mid would be kind of surprising. Let's be honest. It's a good football program. They're going to bring in good coaches. They're going to bring in good players. Honestly, the draw of playing in the SEC is probably more for those programs than it was for the Big 12, if we're being realistic. So, no. But, yeah, I think it's going to be harder to win in college football. That's kind of my rant about this. I think that we don't know what it's going to look. It's starting to look more like the NFL. And, yeah, I know that people hate that, but there's some pros to that. I mean, we're going to get more football to watch. We're going to get more college football to watch. So let's look at the positives, because I know not everyone's happy with all the changes, and I'm not happy with all the changes either, but let's look at it in a positive way. There's going to be on-campus playoff games. That's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, most of the people watching this are Georgia fans. Wouldn't a playoff game in Athens be awesome? That would be a lot of fun. That'd be an elite environment, and elite college football environments are some of the best environments in sports. And I am happy that I get to go to them. Even though Georgia lost the SEC championship game, for example, it was an incredible football game to be at. And more of those are going to happen because all of a sudden in September, Texas is playing Georgia, or in October, Oklahoma's playing LSU. There's just going to be more and more really good football games. And so, yes, these changes are going to make it harder to win, but not all the changes, I think, are bad. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the site at dawgpost.com.